how are you? Good to see you. Thank you for having us out. Yes, I'm going to get started and then we'll take a picture. Are we just starting briefly outside?
We're going to start outside.
Okay. How's everybody doing? Good to be with you. So grateful for the welcome. So grateful to the Hernandez family for opening up their establishment, their restaurant, bright and early on a Sunday morning for all of us so that we could come together, not as Democrats, not as independents, not as Republicans, but as Americans for this country that we love so much. We've never had a greater set of challenges as a country before us, knowing that there are millions who are unable to see a doctor or take their child to a therapist or afford their prescriptions, millions unable to earn a living wage, live lives of dignity. As you have taught me in Las Vegas, one job should be enough for all of us. Too many, coming back from the wars that we fight, that we send those service members to. Just met a veteran as I came in, unable to get an appointment at a VA to see that healthcare provider who can literally make the life or death difference for them. 20 veterans a day, every single day in this country, losing their lives by their own hands, the majority of whom were unable, or for whatever reason unwilling, perhaps because of the wait times, to go to that VA. I want to make sure that for each of those challenges, and making the most out of everyone who's in this country, every dreamer, more than 1 million strong, made U.S. citizens so that they can contribute to their full potential. Everybody coming together around the existential challenge of a changing climate, one who is changing because of our own excesses and our own inaction in this brief window left to us to meet this challenge before it is too late. I want to make sure that we harness the ingenuity, the innovation, the creativity, and the resolve of every single American. But to do that, we've got to campaign for and serve every single American. You cannot be too rural or too urban, too Democrat or too Republican. In this divided country, at this polarized moment, I want to make sure that we bring everyone together on common ground, towards a common cause, for the common good of this country and for every generation that follows. You with me? Well, I am with you, and I'm grateful to be running to serve you as the next president of the United States. Thank you. Thank you for having us out. We will come back out after we get a chance to go inside and eat some tacos. Thank you all for having us. Hey, thanks for being here. Thank you very much.
Why are you afraid to use your own name? Your name is Robert Francis. You're Irish. Why are you embarrassed to use your own name?
Folks, my parents and my parents.
Are you embarrassed to be Irish? He's embarrassed to use his own name. He's embarrassed to use his own name.
Good to see you again. Yeah. Good to see you. Cynthia. You want to do that? Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Marvin, nice to meet you. Who do we have? Hey everybody, good to see you.
We love you, Beto.
I love you too.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Marvin, mi esposa Mirna y mi familia, somos la familia Wiwi. Es un honor para nosotros tenerlos a todos ustedes aquí. Gracias por venir. Es un placer para nosotros presentarles al ex congresista de Texas y ahora candidato presidencial.
Gracias a la familia Arandas y Taqueria Arandas para recibirnos aquí en su comunidad, en su restaurante. A todos que están aquí con nosotros en este momento tan importante. Si queremos enfrentar los retos de la reforma migratoria, del cambio climático, también un sistema de cuidado de salud, necesitamos un país en que cualquier persona pueda participar con su voz y su voto en su democracia. También necesitamos una economía que quiere el éxito también del país, pero la gente que está adentro de nuestras comunidades que pueden vivir sus vidas con dignidad, con respeto para todos. The challenges that we face have never been greater. Whether it is ensuring that we make the most out of every single one of us in every single community, including more than 1 million dreamers who should be freed from any fear of deportation by being made U.S. citizens here in their country of choice and the one to which they are already contributing so much. Whether it is a healthcare system that allows our fellow Americans to die of the flu, of diabetes, of curable cancers while we await the political will and the resolve to do the right thing in this, the wealthiest, the most powerful country the world has ever known. Whether it's ensuring that the 1 degree Celsius that our temperature has raised on this planet just since 1980 is not allowed to rise another 1 degree, after which our children and our grandchildren will no longer be able to live in some of our communities. Our farmers and ranchers and producers will no longer be able to produce the food on which we depend, grow the fiber that clothes not just this country, but so much of the rest of the world. If we are going to meet these challenges, then we need a democracy that expects and brings out the very best from all of us. No me importa if you are a Democrat or a Republican or an independent. The only thing that matters is you're an American, a human being, and you're here in this country with a chance to act. But in order to ensure that we have a democracy that is up to these challenges, we need to make sure that everyone can participate and that everyone can vote. We've got to get big money out of our politics. That's why we do not take a dime from a single political action committee or lobbyist or corporation. We've got to make sure that we end the practice of gerrymandering in our communities and in our states. We need a new Voting Rights Act so that every American, regardless of the color of their skin, can choose their representatives or be our representatives. But if we want to have a true political democracy, then we must have something approaching an economic democracy. And this concentration of wealth and power and privilege in this country that we have not seen in the lifetimes of anyone in this room must be broken up. A $2 trillion tax cut at a time of $21 trillion in debt, whose benefits flowed disproportionately to the wealthiest, to corporations already sitting on record piles of cash. When all of these challenges go unmet, we need to make sure that the dignity of every single American, their ability to work just one job, and as you told me, one job should be enough. Paid family leave, universal guarantee, high quality health care, a fight for $15 an hour, and ensuring that every high school senior is not just college ready, but they are career ready, working with unions, working with the trades, apprenticeships to ensure that when we finally invest in the $4 trillion of outstanding infrastructure need in this country, that we tie it to apprenticeships to ensure that we have the trained workforce, not just for today, but for the future. That every woman and man in this country has purpose and function in their lives. They can work where they live because they are trained to do so and because we have invested in their communities. For all of these reasons, for the challenges we face, which together produce the greatest opportunity this country has ever seen to fulfill her promise, I am running to serve you as the next president of the United States. And so, Mirna, to the Hernandez family, to all of you who have made some time for me, who have welcomed me to your community, who want to work together to make sure that we meet these challenges and fulfill our promise. I say thank you. I came because I have no hope of earning your vote and your support for being able to effectively serve you. If I have not first met you, heard things from your perspective, had the chance to answer your questions. I'm looking forward to the conversation, and I'm looking forward going into the future, working together to make sure that whoever the nominee might be, come summer 2020, we together do everything within our power to make her or him as successful as possible against Donald Trump and for the United States of America. Thank you all for having me. Very, very grateful. Thank you. Gracias. Cynthia's got a microphone. We will bring the microphone to you. Ask your question. Give me your idea. I'm all ears. I'm listening. Looking forward to learning from you. Here's our first one.
Hi, my name is Ruby Becker. How would you make schools safer with gun safety?
All right, Ruby Becker. For those who could not hear, asked how do we make schools safer? Ruby, what grade are you in?
4th grade.
Ruby's in 4th grade. Let's hear it for Ruby. Great question. Good job. My youngest child, our youngest child, Henry, 8 years old, was in 1st grade last year. Remember him coming home from school one day, and when we asked him what he had done, he didn't talk about learning to add or subtract or reading a book or playing with his friends. He talked about his teacher, who chances are in Texas is working a second job because we do not pay our educators a living wage in Texas, who chances are has pulled $800 out of her pocket. That's the average in Texas. Not just to pay for the decorations in the classroom or the supplies for that kid who forgot them at home, but also for the hot meal for that child who's on free and reduced breakfast and lunch, but does not have enough food at home to have a meal at night, or the set of clothes for that kid who has shown up in the same pair of jeans, the same t-shirt, the same chones probably, every single day of the week until Friday. That teacher, out of her own pocket, has paid for a new set of clothes. We now ask that teacher, Henry told us, to gather his fellow students with him into a closet to enact an active shooter drill to prepare them for what too many feel is the inevitable. In a country that loses 30,000 of our fellow Americans, including our littlest Americans, every year to preventable gun violence. I say preventable because either this is our lot in life and our fate. There's something inherently violent and deadly and evil about being an American, or this is a human-caused problem with a human solution. So you ask, what do we do? Universal background checks without exception for every American who buys a firearm, and then ensuring that weapons designed for war and use on the battlefield, weapons designed expressly for the purpose of killing people, as effectively, as efficiently, in as great a number as possible, stay on the battlefield and are not sold into our communities. That will make us safer. That will ensure that we protect more lives, and you can focus on learning, on getting ahead, and that teacher can focus on you going forward. Those are some steps that we can take together. Thank you, Ruby. Great question.
Right here, but there are questions right here.
All right, Beto. I want to thank you for coming out to Las Vegas. I'm actually from Chuco myself. Chico Tacos.
What high school?
I went to Silver Health Magnet.
Right on boxes, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Viva la Jeff.
Yeah, there we go. So I wanted to ask you, I went to school, I went to grad school, and I'm really much in a lot of debt. What are you going to do to help us, like not just me, like millions of people like us that are drowning in student loan debt?
Great question. In our hometown of El Paso, we are now investing in early college high schools. You can graduate at 18 years old, not just with a diploma, but an associate's degree under your belt, taking on no debt, not a dime, added to the $1.5 trillion in outstanding student loan debt that our fellow Americans, many of them in this room like you, are carrying on their backs right now. The one kind of debt that you will never shake off until you paid it off or until you are in the grave. So using that El Paso example, let's stop digging a hole. Let's ensure every single American can go to any community college debt-free, free of cost to them. Let's ensure any public university, publicly financed by you and me, four-year university, you're able to go and graduate debt-free as well. And then let's make sure that we learn something from this country's history and its success in growing the largest middle class, being prepared to come out of the Great Depression and to fight World War II by investing in one another, in our ability to organize and use the leverage of our value in the workplace to ensure that we not only have better wages and better working conditions, but that we are trained for the skills for today and for tomorrow, ensuring that we are college ready and career ready, that at 18 years old, you can join up with a union, enter an apprenticeship, have a trade and a skill that will make you competitive for your life, being able to work where you live. Nevada is now a leader in this, insisting that at least 15% of the infrastructure and public works jobs that are created are apprenticeships, and that 5% of those are first-year apprenticeships. We are creating more high-skill, high-wage, high-value jobs in this country than we have trained Americans to fill them right now. Let's invest in their education with no debt. Let's invest in their career readiness with no debt. And then, if you're one of those who's holding some of that debt, and it averages now $40,000 for a graduating college senior, and that is just an average, let's help you to refinance that debt. Or if you're willing to commit yourself in some part of your life to public service, if you're willing to fill one of those 49,000 funded unfilled positions in the VA to take care of one of those heroes who's come back from serving this country in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, or the wars since 9/11, let's wipe clean your debt so you can help those who put their lives on the line for this country. Thank you for the question.
Hi, thank you for being here. My name is Mary. I think a lot of us have forgotten, because it's not in the news much anymore, about the children on the border. I am the mother of an adopted child from an orphanage in Eastern Europe. And I know, looking at all the children that have come out of there, how many of them carry it through for quite some time. And I want to know what you're going to do for these kids. We don't even know the number.
Right. Thank you so much for the question. And for me, the answer comes back to my hometown of El Paso, Texas. It is one half of the largest binational community in the hemisphere. With Ciudad Juarez, there are 3 million of us speaking 2 languages, from 2 different countries, 2 cultures, 2 histories, that are joined, not separated, by the Rio Grande River, forming something far greater, far more powerful, far more magical than the sum of the parts or the number of people involved. A quarter of those with whom I live in El Paso were born in another country. And the way I look at it, they chose us. They wanted to get here to have a better life for themselves and their kids, for sure. But they were also called to the United States to contribute to our shared success, and they do. El Paso is one of the safest cities in the United States, not in spite of the fact that it's a city of immigrants, but because it is a city of immigrants. When we lose sight of that, and the fact that so much of this country is composed of the descendants of immigrants and asylum seekers and refugees, we lose sight of it at our own peril. And we begin to do things that are absolutely un-American as well as inhumane. Imagine this. What would compel you to scoop up your baby girl and walk 2,000 miles, maybe some of that on the roof of a train known as La Bestia or the Beast, penniless, stranger in a strange land? When you show up at our front door on the Texas-Mexico border, things would have to be really bad for you, and you would have no other choice. When Amy and I talk about this in terms of our kids, we would do the exact same thing if faced with the exact same conditions. And what did we do to these families at their most desperate and vulnerable moment? We literally took that child from the arms of the mother who risked her very life to bring her here to this country, deported mom back to Guatemala or El Salvador or Honduras, turned that child over to Health and Human Services, maybe a foster care home in Michigan, with no hope or prospect or understanding of when or even if they would be reunited, though we would like to lay the blame for this at the feet of the president, and he deserves much of it. In a democracy where the people are the government, and the government is the people, for as long as these conditions persist, for as long as those kids remain separated from their parents, it is on every single one of us. So not only must we follow our own asylum laws and be there for those who have no other home to go to, who pose no threat to this country, in fact, will contribute far more than they're ever able to take from America. I want to make sure that we completely rewrite our immigration laws in our own image. The image of Las Vegas, the image of El Paso, the image of the United States of America. Not only freeing dreamers by making them U.S. citizens, ensuring that it does not come at the price of their parents, the original dreamers, or militarizing their communities, or building a 2,000-mile, 30-foot-high, $30 billion wall at a time of record safety and security and low apprehensions on our southern border. I want to make sure that we fulfill our promise, live to our potential, and ensure that we bring out the very best from every single one of us. So let's reunite those families. Let's not separate them again, and let's take care of one another going forward. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Aurelie, and I'm a senior in high school. I graduate in May, but I just wanted to know, I followed your Senate race the entire time, and I was really inspired, and I love you. I see that in my high school, there's a lot of voter apathy, especially between like Gen Z people and millennials. I want to know, what are you going to do to try to kind of make the turnout higher, the voter turnout, and get people inspired and involved? Because I try to do that myself, but what are you going to do to try to make that and amplify that so more people actually get involved in the process?
Listen, I'm not going to pretend to have the answer. You have the answer. I've got to follow your lead. You're not going to be the leader of tomorrow or next year or 10 years from now. You're the leader today. The very youngest person in this room asked the first question about gun violence. It is because of her persistence and advocacy, regardless of whether she's old enough to vote, we're going to get the change that we need to save more lives. You are going to ensure that your fellow students are registered to vote, that they go out to the polls, that they make an informed decision when they are at the ballot box. I know because I saw it in Texas. Young voter turnout in our state was up 500% from 2014. It had little to do with the candidate or the party and everything to do with young leaders who made sure that it was a priority for every reason that they had to vote. Those that we discussed or others that they had brought to the table. We were a state that ranked 50th in the nation in voter turnout until this last year. We were drawn that way based on your race, your ethnicity, your country of origin. You were drawn out of a congressional district, therefore a reason to vote, therefore your very democracy. The results were predictable until we transcended that with the leadership of young people and people of all ages, races, and backgrounds from every one of the 254 counties that we visited across the state of Texas. You could not be too rural or urban for us to show up. A county that had voted for Donald Trump, 96%. We showed up there because I hope you would agree they are every bit as deserving of our respect, of being heard, of being listened to, of being fought for, and of being served. And I do not expect them to vote for me or with us unless we first show up and earn their respect. The same is true going to college campuses and high schools and putting young people in the vanguard of our campaign. They're the ones responsible for the fact that though we came up a little bit short in the Senate race, 2 safe Republican seats are now held by Democrats in the House of Representatives from Texas and in Houston, Texas. Harris County, 17 African American women just elected to official positions of public trust, literally changing the face of criminal justice in the largest city in our state, the most diverse city in the United States of America. So no pressure, but we're counting on you.
Hold on, real quick. We got a question right here,
And then let's come back here.
I have a question.
Hey,
how you doing?
good to see you.
Good to see you.
You know El Paso and Chico's Tacos just as well as anyone else here. Thank you for coming out.
Hey, I told you I was going to support you for president when I left El Paso.
That's
I'm
right.
here right now.
Good to see you, man. So good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
So obviously, I transitioned out of the military. Great success as I went into my community, I realized that the issue with suicide was much more greater. But the one thing that was similar was that the fact that, especially in our youth, that we lack the resiliency to be able to adapt to our environment. Kids whose parents are facing a divorce, losing their jobs, are just as prone to suicides as veterans are. How would you empower the community the way that you have empowered me before I got here to be able to make the changes within ourselves and to get all the leaders on board with it?
Thank you so much. Really good to see you. I'm grateful that you're here. Also appreciate your service to our country, which did not end when you were out of uniform. Every day that I've known you, you've been advocating for your fellow veterans and for everyone in El Paso, now here in Nevada, in Las Vegas. Last year, we lost 150,000 of our fellow Americans, human beings, to drug overdose deaths and to suicide. Now, the rate amongst veterans is alarming. I mentioned it's 20 a day. That's a conservative estimate. Amongst veterans who have an other than honorable discharge, it is twice as high. And thanks to you and other veterans in our community, we were able to write a bill signed by President Trump, supported by Republicans, that allows those veterans with an OTH discharge to now get into the VA and see a provider. But I was just traveling in Wisconsin. They're shutting down more than one dairy farm a day in that state in the midst of these trade wars and these tariffs. And predictably, perhaps, the rate of suicide in rural communities in Wisconsin, in Texas, throughout the United States is beginning to climb. Opioid addiction, we are 4% of the globe's population. We consume 85% of her opioids. Diseases of despair are consuming our communities right now. Not only do we need purpose and function and dignity for every single American, we have to confront the fact that the largest provider of mental health care services in so many of our states, my home state included, is the county jail system. People throwing a chair through a window to get arrested on purpose for their schizophrenia, their bipolar disorder, their depression, to go to the one place, the county jail cell, where they are guaranteed a roof over their head, a shirt on their back, food before them, and the psychotropic medications prescribed that are otherwise unaffordable outside of that jail cell that make life bearable, even if only temporarily for them. So all of this, that economic democracy, including and maybe especially our rural communities, a political democracy that ensures that every vote and voice counts and is counted, and then ensuring that we have a healthcare system that guarantees high quality, universal healthcare coverage, primary healthcare, specialty healthcare, mental healthcare, and every single woman in this country making her own decisions about her own body. If we are willing to do all of those things, we will see outcomes improve, we will see lives saved. But all of this is connected, and it will take all of us to work on it. As someone shared with me on one of the first days of the campaign, we cannot meet these challenges by half measure, and we cannot meet them with half the country. This cannot be a Democratic Party solution. This cannot be led only by Republicans. It's going to be all of us, because the lives of so many count on our resolve and our ability to come together. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it.
Richard.
Thank you.
Buenos dias.
Buenos dias.
El Paso native. Is that a high school class? Immigration, comprehensive immigration reform. We've been fighting for it for over 20 years, and yet we still don't have it. What are you going to do about this, Beto?
So we talked earlier about some of the specific steps that we would take. Dreamers, made U.S. citizens, let's ensure they're contributing to their full potential. As you already know, it's not dreamers in the classroom only, it's dreamers who are teaching in the classroom. It's not dreamers who are served by those who put their lives on the line in Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. It is dreamers whose lives are on the line in Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Let's make sure that their status is fixed, that they are U.S. citizens, that they are able to fully participate in this democracy. The primary beneficiary is not the dreamer or their family. It is all of us if we're able to do it. Let's acknowledge that when we ask people to get in the back of the line, to join family, to flee persecution, to come here and work a job that we're unable to fill in this country, that line right now stretches up to 20 years long. Let's raise the visa caps that we have. Let's prioritize family reunification. It's good for that family. It's great for the community in which they reside. Let's make sure that none of this comes at the price of our border communities like El Chuco, that we don't militarize them, that we acknowledge that treating people with dignity and respect is the best way to secure our communities and the safety of every single person within them. Let's acknowledge that this country's success, the foundation for our strength, our safety day in and day out is premised on the genius of incorporating the lives of people from the planet over here in communities like Las Vegas, here in communities like throughout Nevada, and here in the United States of America. Lastly, let's acknowledge the impact of our words and the rhetoric used, especially by those who hold the highest positions of trust in the country. When the president calls Mexican immigrants rapists and criminals, when he describes asylum seekers as animals and an infestation. Infestation might be a word you would hear in the Third Reich. It's not a word you hear describing our fellow human beings in the world's greatest democracy. When the president seeks to ban all Muslim travel to the United States, this country composed of people from every tradition of faith the world over, as though they are somehow inherently dangerous or violent. When he calls Klansmen and neo-Nazis and white supremacists very fine people, you begin to explain a rise in hate crimes in this country every single one of the last 3 years. You begin to understand the question posed to us by a third grader at LBJ Elementary in El Paso, Mexican-American girl who says, "Why does the president not like me?" When I share that in Houston, a Muslim family says their daughter, third grade, also asked them the same question when she came home from school. What does that do to their heads, to their conception of who they are, their future in this country? I want to make sure that we treat everybody with the dignity and respect that they are owed as Americans and as human beings, that is reflected and championed at the highest levels of power. Thank you, sir, for the question.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Javier Velasquez, a small business owner. One of my concerns is when you think about the small business owner. As a small business owner, I know we create 1/3 of the new place of jobs in our communities. Somehow, I agree with your proposal to raise the wages, but in order to raise it, we need to have the conditions to create new jobs as well. What is your proposal for our new communities to create, put the conditions for the small business?
Thank God. Thank you for the question. Thank you for being here. With some good friends in El Paso in the late 90s, I started a small business. High wage, high skill, high tech jobs in a community that needed them, but a community that had so much to offer if only someone would channel the talent, the expertise, and the experience there. I was very lucky to be part of that. Know what it's like, though, to meet that payroll week in, week out, to know that not only does my family, but the families of our employees depend on our ability to keep that business growing and to make sure that we fulfill our commitments to our clients. As we have concentrated the power of corporations and the wealthy in this country, we have slowed the dynamism of the U.S. economy and small business growth and formation in the first place. I'll put it in perspective. Those veterans who came back from World War II, nearly half of them started a small business when they returned to this country. In the wars since 9/11, the rate is 4%. As more power, more market share is consolidated into those corporations, to whom we just gave the lion's share of $2 trillion in tax cuts, though they were sitting on record piles of cash, we took a rate from 35% down to 21%. We rewarded them for offshoring jobs that used to be in this country, and we put at a disadvantage the small business owner, the mom and pop shop, the little gal, the little guy throughout this country. So when I talk about breaking up that concentration of power, when I talk about a tax code that favors small business owners so that you have the resources to do what you just described, when we ensure there's more opportunity for everyone in every community, not only do small business owners and their employees do better, but so does this country at large. So I want to make sure that we are supporting you. We ensure that there is access to capital in every community, not just those communities that have traditionally been able to depend on wealth and a network that has been there since the beginning of this country, but everyone has a chance to succeed in America. Thank you for the question. Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm a Casa native as well.
Anybody from Las Vegas in the room?
I've been in Vegas 36 years. So I want to ask you not what you're going to do, but what can we do about the opium problem in the country? I just lost my son 6 months ago. I know you're not counting on these huge pharmaceuticals to make you president. We are going to make you president. So I want to know how you're going to deal with them, because these pharmaceuticals are way over medicating people. Like you have no idea, and causing deaths that shouldn't be. My son was 33 years old, so it hits home. So what can we do as a nation to cut this off?
I know that I speak for everyone in this room and everyone who is watching from outside of this room in thanking you for your courage and sharing your story. And we send you all the strength that we have. And we want to make sure that there is justice, there is accountability for what is going on in this country. So first and foremost, thank you for being here and sharing that. I mentioned the rate of opioid use, abuse, and overdose death in this country. No other country even comes close. In fact, we're consuming 85% of the opioids, and that is again not inherent to us as Americans. Purdue Pharma, which sold these opioids as a miracle drug that was non-addictive, that would kill your pain without any side effects, knew at some point that these drugs were addictive. And they predictably led not just to people abusing the prescriptions, but the vast majority of everyone who buys fentanyl or heroin on the street began with a legal prescription. In a meeting like this, I met a veteran who stood up and said the VA prescribed opioids. The VA, which by the way cannot prescribe medicinal cannabis, which is not addictive. And I became hooked. The VA cut off my prescription, and now I'm buying heroin on the street because it is the only way that I can take care of myself right now. That gentleman, your son, they're not criminals. They do not belong in jail. It is an opportunity for us to care for them, to show compassion, to provide the long-term help that will sustain them in their lives and ensure that they are okay. And then Purdue Pharma, responsible for this crisis, has paid no meaningful cost. There's been no reckoning or accounting for what they have done. In this, a country that boasts the largest prison population per capita on the planet, so many there for nonviolent drug crimes, and though Americans will use illegal drugs across all races at the same rate, only some people of color are more likely than others to be arrested, to do time, to check a box on every employment application form saying that they have a conviction, making it less likely that they will be hired. Only some will not be able to have a federally subsidized student loan to be able to continue their education and improve themselves. Think about that those responsible for death are going scot-free, and those arrested for possession of a substance like marijuana that is legal in most states in this country are rotting behind bars right now. We need real criminal justice reform and a real focus on public health for every single American. Thank you very much for the question. Appreciate it.
This is our last question.
Good morning. Thank you for being here. My name is Brenda Wee. My question is, I know you mentioned about paid leave, which is really important, and I'm really excited. We have the Family Act going on right now. But I want to see your stance for states like Nevada, where we don't even have paid sick days. What can we do at a national level for every state to have paid sick days and paid leave?
Yeah, great. Great question. How do we make sure that the dignity and the opportunity inherent in every single American is realized regardless of the state you live in? If it is in Nevada where you may not have paid family leave, if it is in Texas where we did not expand Medicaid, so you have that much harder a time seeing a doctor or affording your prescription or taking your child to see a provider. We met a young woman in Waco, Texas, who told me that she was refusing the advancement at work, new position with a raise, because it would price her out of the Children's Health Insurance Program. She said, my advancement will mean the penalization of my kids. They'll no longer be able to see a provider. We are holding her back. By extension, we are holding her family back. I think at that point, it becomes a national issue and a federal opportunity to partner with states contingent on their ability and their willingness and the political will to do their part. So you mentioned the Family Act. Let's sign that into law. 12 weeks, 66% of your income. And you're able to take care of a loved one. You're able to raise a family. You're able to take some time off if you are sick without consequence to your ability to pay the bills or the mortgage or put food on the table. Let's ensure that housing wherever you live is affordable. There's a federal role and responsibility there. Trump wants to zero out the Community Development Block Grant Program, which local communities use to ensure that there's affordable housing for those who are literally the foundation of that community's success. Let's not only not zero it out, let's strengthen it so that more people in more communities can afford a roof over their head. We talked about healthcare earlier, the dignity of at least $15 an hour for every single working American, because one job should be enough. All of these are national priorities, and so they should be federal responsibilities to partner with local communities and states to ensure the dignity and the opportunity of every single one of us. Thank you for asking the question. Really appreciate it. That is our last question, and I just want to say thank you again to the Arandas family. I want to say thank you to everyone who came out, especially my friends from El Paso. I want to thank the community of Las Vegas for welcoming us so warmly. We will see you again very soon. Thank you.